Good to be back. Welcome back to my channel. My name is Setson. Today, I want to talk about paradigms in programming. If you want to be able to build applications, one of the concepts that you need to understand is paradigms. A programming paradigm is a fundamental style or way of thinking about how to structure and write code. It's not a syntax rule or a specific language feature. It's the underlying philosophy that shapes how you approach solving a problem with code. Okay, so you can think of it like genres of music. You can play the same notes on the same instrument, different paradigms. So there are two major paradigms. There is imperative programming and there is declarative programming. So imperative programming simply is tell me how to do it. When it comes to declarative programming, you're saying tell me what you want. So let's look at imperative programming first. Imperative programming, you write step-by-step instructions that mutate the program state. The computer executes your commands in order. A real-world analogy would be a recipe. A recipe would be like first chop the onions, then heat up the pan, and then put some oil and simmer for maybe 5 minutes, etc. So let's look at this example. Let's actually apply it in a program. So I'm going to create a project folder. I'm going to go to my desktop. I'll create a new folder here, paradigms. And so now I'm going to open this in Visual Studio Code. So I'll right click and show more options. And there's open with code. There's an option here to say open with code. So I'm going to open that. And to see the folder is now open in Visual Studio Code. You can see up here it says paradigm. And so now inside paradigm, let's create a file here. I'm going to name it main.py, but you could name it whatever you want. Let's use the imperative style to write a program. So it requires us to tell the computer how to do it. Let's have our numbers. So we're going to have a list of numbers right here. I'm using Python, by the way. And so I'm going to have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And let's say we want to square these numbers. I'm going to say squares right here, which is an empty list. I'm going to create an empty list where I'm going to put the squares. Okay? And then I can say for num, in numbers, we're going to say squares dot append. We're going to append num multiply by num. Let's try and print down here the squares after we finish. And print the squares down here. Let me save. Let me run this. You can say Python main.py. If I run that, you can see now we squared the number. This paradigm is what we call imperative, because we are telling the computer a step-by-step process on how to achieve a certain task. In this case, it was squaring these numbers right here. So basically what you're doing when you're doing imperative is you are telling the computer exactly how to build the result. Let's move on to declarative programming. This is different from imperative in the sense that instead of tell me how to do it, you now have to tell me what you want. You describe the desired outcome and the underlying system figures out how to achieve it. You don't control the step-by-step flow. A real-world analogy would be when you order something in a restaurant. You just say out what you want and then what you want is going to be delivered. Whatever happens under the hood, you don't understand what's going on. So in Python, we can do the same. You could have a declarative style of writing your code. So instead of using this approach right here, we could use a different approach. Let me create a different variable. Squares declarative way. The declarative way, you just use maybe list comprehension. You can say num multiply by num for num in numbers. And so what this will do is we will create squares right here. Let's see whether this is going to work. We can print if squares declarative. So let me save that. Let's see whether we're going to get the same result. Let me clear and run. As you can see, we're still getting the same result. This is more declarative. We're just telling it we want this, and under the hood it's going to work on it. So this is what we call list comprehension in Python. Instead of doing this, that you just declare what you want and everything will be taken care of. So this is a declarative style. This one right here is an imperative style of writing code. So this is what we call paradigms. Another language that uses a declarative style is structured query language. SQL or SQL. When you write this command, for instance, let me copy this line and let me paste it right here. This is the language of databases. So when you do something like this instruction here or this command right here is what we call declarative programming. Because you're just declaring what you want, and whatever happens under the hood, the database driver is going to take care of that. The paradigm map, how the major paradigms branch out. And of course, they branch out into other paradigms. Imperative branches out to two major ones, which is procedural and object-oriented. And then under declarative, we have functional, and then we have logic. What you need to know is most programming languages support most of these paradigms. So basically, this leads me to what we want to look at after this tutorial. We want to look at object-oriented programming in Python specifically. So in our next class, I'm going to look at Python OOP, which is a paradigm, which is just a style of writing code. The concept that you're going to learn here is applicable in other languages as well. So we're just using Python because it's one of the easiest languages to learn. All right, so I want to thank you for your time. If you do have any questions, you can leave them in the comment section. I hope to see you in my next tutorial. For now, I'm out. Cheers.